Today we're going to learn how to construct and interpret two-way tables. You should be on page 11 in your notes packet. Ms. Johnson's class collected data on whether or not they have a curfew on school nights and whether or not they have assigned chores. The two-way table below displays this data. One category is represented by rows and the other category is represented by columns. You can see that when in your two-way table, you have chores and no chores, and you have curfew and no curfew. You also have a column for the total and a row for the total. What's important to know about a two-way table is that this very last number at the bottom right corner is always going to be the total number of people that were in your survey. In this case, we can see that this number right here, 12, represents 12 students who have a curfew and who have chores. 3 students represent students who have no curfew and who have chores. 5 students represent students who have a curfew but have no chores. 10 students represent students who have no curfew and no chores. Then you have these totals. 17 represents all of the students who have curfews. So you had 12 students with curfew and chores and 5 students with curfew and no chores. That is 17 total students who have a curfew. 13 represents 13 students who do not have a curfew. That is 3 students with no curfew and chores, 10 students with no curfew and no chores. So that is 13 total students with no curfew. Then you have these numbers down here. Well, both of these are 15. This first 15 represents students who have chores. The second 15 represents students who have no chores. 30 represents that there were 30 total students who were surveyed for this. Question A says, how many students have a curfew? Well, we know that there are 12 students who have a curfew and chores and 5 students who have a curfew and no chores. But if I'm looking for the total number of students who have a curfew, I'm going to look in this column or this row and I'm going to go all the way to this totals part. Well, this shows me that there are 17 students who have a curfew. B says how many students don't have a curfew or chores. So we're looking for students who have no curfew and no chores. So let's start with no curfew. Well, 3 students have no curfew but have chores. So that's not going to help me. I'm looking for don't have a curfew and don't have chores. Well, then we have 10 students who have no curfew and have no chores. So that means that my solution here is that there are 10 students who don't have a curfew or chores. C says how many students surveyed have a curfew but no chores. Well, if I'm looking for students who have a curfew, then I'm going to look in this row. And if I'm looking for no chores, then I need to look in this column. So where these meet up is right here. There are 5 students who have a curfew but have no chores. D says what percentage of students surveyed have chores? Well, chores are right here. And I'm looking for, first of all, I need to know how many students have chores. Well, I know that in total, there are 15 students who have chores. In order to find a percentage, I always need to do a part over a whole. Well, my part here is the 15 students who do have chores. And that's out of my whole number of students who were surveyed. In this case, the total number of students surveyed is 30. Now, all you have to do at this point is put this in your calculator as 15 divided by 30, because we know that a fraction bar always tells us to divide. If we do 15 divided by 30, we get 0.5. Now remember, that is just the decimal. but this question asks for the percent. To change from a decimal to a percent, all you have to do is move your decimal 2 places to the right. So I would move my decimal right here. Well, I have an empty space here, and when I have an empty space, I need to fill that with a 0. So that means that this is 50%. So if I look at this, it makes sense because 15 is half of 30 and 50% is half. So half or 50% of students surveyed have chores. E says what percentage of students surveyed do not have a curfew but have chores. So we're looking for do not have a curfew but that do have chores. So no curfew is on this row, but having chores is on this column. So where they meet is right here. That means there are 3 students who have no curfew but chores, and that is out of 30 total students. Again, I would put this in my calculator as 3 divided by 30. When I put that in my calculator, I get 0.1. And then all I have to do to change this to a percent is move my decimal 2 places to the right. So it's going to go here, and there's going to be an empty space, which I would fill with a 0. So this is 10% of students who do not have a curfew, but that do have chores. F says explain whether the statement is true or false. Roughly more of the students surveyed have a curfew. Well, let's look at the difference between curfew and no curfew. I know that there are 17 students who have a curfew and 13 students who do not have a curfew. The problem says roughly, which means approximately, more of the students surveyed have a curfew. Well, I would say that this is true, and I would say that that is because 17 students have a curfew, which is more than the 13 students who do not have a curfew. The data below shows the enrollment in language classes of students at Citrus High. Complete the table. Well, before we can answer any questions about this, we have to have a full table. And when you look at this table, you can see that there is a lot of stuff that's not filled out. First, let's just look at this table and see what it shows. It shows students enrolled in Spanish, French, German, and Latin, and it shows students in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. We also know that we have a total row and a total column. Well, what we can see is that there are 400 total students for this table. Now, we need to figure out how to fill out the missing pieces. To fill out missing pieces in a two-way table, the best thing to do is find a row or a column that has all but one piece of information. If I start with my total column right here, I can see that all of these are filled out and there is one missing right here. Well, I can figure this out. I know that there were 400 total students. Well, I can see that there were 54 students in 12th grade, 72 students in 11th grade, and 106 students in 10th grade. To figure out how many students were in 9th grade, I can take these numbers away from the total. So to find this number, I'm going to do 400 minus 54 minus 72 minus 106. So I'm just going to put that in my calculator and take all of those away from the total. And what I'll be left with is how many 9th grade students there are. Well, when I subtract that, I get 168. So that means that there is a total of 168 ninth grade students. Now, if I look at my ninth grade row, I can see that now I have enough information to figure out this missing piece for ninth grade. I know there are 168 total ninth graders, 0 take Latin, 14 take German, and 71 take French. So to figure out how many are remaining that take Spanish, I'm going to take the total number of ninth grade students, and I'm going to subtract 71, 14, and 0 from those. When I subtract those, I get 83. So there are 83 ninth graders who take Spanish. Now that I have this filled out, I can see that I can figure out my column for Spanish because now I am only missing one piece of information in this column. I can see that there are 155 total students who take Spanish, but I don't know how many of those are 12th graders. Well, I can take away the 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade numbers from that total. So I'm going to take 155 and subtract 83, 46, and 12 from that. When I do that, I get 14. So that means that there are 14 12th graders who take Spanish. Now, when I look at this row, my 12th grade row, I have, again, almost everything filled out, but I'm missing this piece right here, my 12th graders who take French. Well, I know that there are 54 total 12th graders. So to figure out how many of them take French, I'm going to take away the Latin, German, and Spanish numbers from that 54 total. So I'm going to do 54 minus 14 minus 9 minus 8. When I subtract those, I get 13. So that means that there are 13 12th graders who take French. Now that I have this number, you can see that I can figure out my French column. So I can figure out my missing piece here. I don't know how many 10th graders took French, but I know that 137 total students took French. So I can take away the 9th grade, the 11th grade, and the 12th grade numbers from that. So I'm going to do 137 minus 71 minus 19 minus 13. When I do that, I get 34. So that means that there are 34 students who took French in 10th grade. Now when I look at my 10th grade row, I see that, again, I have almost everything filled out but one piece. So I can figure out how many 10th graders took German by looking at the total number of 10th graders. There are 106 10th graders, so I can subtract the number who took Spanish, French, and Latin from that to figure out how many were left in German. So I'm going to subtract 46, 34, and 4. When I do that, I get 22. So that means that there are 22 10th graders who took German. Now that I have this number, you can see that I am only missing one number in my German column. So we can figure out that missing number. I know that there are 76 total students who took German. So to figure out how many of those were in 11th grade, I'm going to do 76 minus 14 minus 22 minus 9. When I do that, I'm going to get 31. So this means that there are 31 11th graders who took German. Now you can see I only have one column and row left, one missing piece left. You can choose to find that by looking at the Latin column or by looking at the 11th grade row, and you would get the same answer either way. If I look at the 11th grade row, I can see that there are 72 total students in 11th grade, and I'm going to take away the number in Spanish, French, and German to figure out how many are taking Latin. So I'm going to do minus 12 minus 19, and minus 31. When I do that, I get 10. So I can see that there are 10 11th grade students taking Latin. Now that we have our two-way table complete, we can answer some questions about this. Question A says, what percentage of students chose French? Well, what I need to know is how many students chose French. Well, when I look at this, I know that there are 137 total students who chose French, since this is my French column. And that is out of 400 total students who were enrolled in language classes. Again, I'm just going to put this in the calculator, and I'm going to do 137 divided by 400. When I do that, I get 0.3425. Well, to change this into a percent, I need to move the decimal 2 places to the right, and you'll see that it's going to go in between the 4 and the 2. So as a percent, this is 34.25%, which is a thing because, yes, percentages do have decimals in them sometimes too. B says, how many 11th grade students chose German? Well, I'm looking for 11th grade students who chose German. So this is my 11th grade row, and this is my German column. So they meet right here at 31. That means that there are 31 11th grade students who chose German. C says, what percentage of 12th grade students chose Spanish? You have to be careful here because this one does not ask what percentage of total students chose Spanish. This is actually asking what percentage of 12th grade students. So the first thing I need to know is how many 12th grade students there are. Well, according to this, because this is my 12th grade row, there are 54 total 12th grade students. Now, I'm looking for the percentage of those who chose Spanish. Well, there are 14, because this is my Spanish column, there are 14 12th graders who chose Spanish. So the percentage of 12th graders who chose Spanish is that there are 14 of them out of 54 total 12th graders. If this had asked for just the percentage of students who chose Spanish overall, then you would have done 155 and over 400. But you have to be careful because this was specifically talking about 12th grade students. Now, when I divide 14 by 54, you'll notice that we actually get a repeating decimal. So we get 0.259, and that 259 repeats. Now, to change this into a percent, you still have to move your decimal 2 places to the right, and that's going to make this 25.9, and then you have your 259, which is going to repeat. So all of this repeats, so I can put a bar over it and then put my percentage symbol. Now, if you look at the top of page 12, you just see some survey results. This says Eloise surveyed the students in cafeteria and found that 38 males agree with new cafeteria rules, while 70 do not. There were 92 females surveyed, and 41 of them agree with the new cafeteria rules. So construct a two-way table summarizing the data. The first thing you want to do when you are constructing a two-way table is figure out what is being compared. Well, the first thing we see is that we are comparing males to females. So I can use one of these to be males and the other to be females. The other thing that I notice that I'm comparing is people who agree with the new rules and people who do not. So over here, we're going to say agree with new rules. And here I'm going to say do not agree with new rules. Now we need to fill this out with our information. The first thing we see is that 38 males agree. So I'm going to fill that in here with males and those who agree. So there are 38 males who agree, and I'll put that here. And then it says, while 70 do not. So 38 males agree, but 70 of them do not agree. So I'm going to put 70 here. Then it says there were 92 females surveyed. Now, that means that there was a total of 92 females. So now I need to look at my female column. Well, since I'm looking at the total, I actually need to look down here. So there is a total of 92 females. Then it says that 41 of them agree. So I'm going to go here because this is where we have agree. And since these are females, I'm going to put that right here. Now that's all the information they gave us. However, we do have enough to figure out the rest of this table. The first thing I can figure out is how many total males were surveyed. I know that 38 agree with the rules and 70 do not. So to figure out how many males were surveyed, I can do 38 plus 70, which is going to give me 108. Now for females, I know that there were 92 total surveyed and 41 who agreed with the rules. So to figure out how many were left that do not agree, I'm going to subtract 92 minus 41. When I do that, I get 51. So there are 51 females who do not agree with the new rules. Now I can take all of this and find my totals. So I know that there were 38 males who agree with the rules and 41 females who agree with the rules. So in total, there are 38 plus 41 people who agree with the new rules. Well, that gives me a total of 79 people who agree with the new rules. For do not agree with the new rules, I know that there are 70 males and 51 females. So to figure out the total, I would do 70 plus 51, which would give me 121 people who do not agree with the new rules. And finally, for the total, I could either add up this column or this row. I'm going to get the same answer either way. If I do 79 plus 121, I get 200. If I had done 108 plus 92, I would also get 200. And that shows me that there were 200 total people surveyed. At lunch, the entire 8th grade class of 320 students were surveyed to see if they were left or right-handed. Only 36 students were left-handed. Well, let's start there with what we know. We know that the entire 8th grade class of 320 students were surveyed. That is the total number of people surveyed altogether. So we know that that always goes down here. Then it says only 36 students were left-handed. So that is 36 students out of everybody who is left-handed. So there is a total of 36 left-handed students. So since left-handed is right here, I'm going to put 36 in the total part. Then it says exactly 45% of the 8th grade class are boys. Well, I need to figure out how I know how many 8th graders are boys. If 45% are boys, then that's 45% of the 320 students in 8th grade. Now, you can do this a few different ways. You have learned how to do percents with proportions. So that is always the part over whole equals percent over 100. This number is always 100. Well, in this case, if I were looking at part and whole, the whole number of students is 320. What I don't actually know here is the part. I don't know the small number because that's what I'm looking for. So instead, I'm going to put an X here. I know that the percent is 45. So instead of percent, I'm going to write 45. And again, that is always over 100. Then you just have a proportion and you can cross multiply. So you would do x times 100, which would be 100x. And then you would do 45 times 320, which would give you 14,400. Well, you're not finished because you would have to get your x by itself. So you would need to divide by 100 on both sides of this equation. These would cancel to leave you with x equals, and if you do 14,400 divided by 100, you get 144. So this means that 144 students are boys. So that's the total number of boys, and I'm going to put that right here. Then it says 127 of which are right-handed. So we know that there are 127 boys who are right-handed. So we're looking at boys and right-handed, which is here. So we're going to put 127. Now it looks like you have a lot of empty spaces here, but you do have enough information to fill out this table. Remember, we always look for either a row or a column that has all but one piece of information complete. Well, if we look at our boys row, we can see that there are 144 total boys and 127 of them are right-handed. To figure out how many are left-handed, we can do 144 minus 127. And that is going to give us 17. So there are 17 boys who are left-handed. Now from here, we can see that we can figure out how many girls are left-handed. We know that there are 36 total students who are left-handed and 17 of those are boys. So to figure out how many are girls, we can do 36 minus 17, which gives us 19. So 19 girls are left-handed. Now, we can't do anything with the girls row yet, but if we skip down to our total row, we see that we have 320 total students and 36 of them are left-handed. To figure out how many are right-handed, we're going to do the total number of students and subtract the left-handed number of students from that. When we do that, we get 284. So there are 284 students who are right-handed. Now I can use that to figure out how many girls are right-handed. I know there are 284 total students who are right-handed, and 127 of them are boys. To figure out how many girls, I'm going to take my total and subtract the number of boys from that. Well, 284 minus 127 is going to give us 157. So there are 157 girls who are right-handed. The last thing I need to do is figure out this total over here, how many girls there are. Well, I can see that there are 19 girls who are left-handed and 157 girls who are right-handed. So to figure out how many girls total, I'm going to do 19 plus 157. Well, when I do that, I'm going to get 176. So that means that there are 176 girls who were surveyed. Now let's use this information to answer some questions. A says what percentage of girls are right-handed? Again, you have to be careful here. It's not asking what percentage of all students are right-handed. It's asking what percentage of girls. Well, I need the total number of girls, which is 176, and I need the number of girls who are right-handed, which is 157. So to turn this to a percent, I would do 157 out of 176. Well, if I do 157 divided by 156, I'm going to get a long decimal, but it's about 0.89204, and it keeps going, and it doesn't really repeat either. Now, we can move this decimal 2 places to the right, and it's going to end up between the 9 and the 2. So as a percent, I can say this is approximately 89.2% if I rounded it to the nearest tenths place. B says how many boys are right-handed. Well, when I look at my boys, this is my row for boys, and this is my column for right-handed. Well, there are 127 boys who are right-handed. C says what percentage of 8th grade students are left-handed. So this is asking for all 8th grade students. So the total number of 8th grade students is 320, and I'm looking for those who are left-handed. Well, there are 36 of those who are left-handed. So to find the percent, I'm going to do 36 over the 320. Well, I'm going to put that in my calculator as 36 divided by 320, and that's going to give me 0.1125. Again, to change this into a percent, I would move this decimal 2 places to the right, and it's going to go between the 1 and the 2. That means that as a percent, this is 11.25%. Your last question asks how many girls are left-handed. So I'm going to look at my girls row and my left-handed column, and they meet right here. So that means that there are 19 girls who are left-handed.